Remember when Hillary Clinton deleted 30,000 emails to hide what really happened during the Benghazi attack? Or how about when the Ontario Liberal government deleted and destroyed emails to show they knew exactly just how much those cancelled gas power plants would cost? These are big deals. And we've caught the Alberta NDP red-handed, lying, and then asking a government agency to delete emails. And the cover-up goes all the way to the Premier's office. I'll explain in a minute, but first, just a little background information. When the NDP brought in their poorly thought out climate leadership plan and carbon tax, they threw the entire electricity system in Alberta into disarray. The climate leadership plan created a huge problem with the power purchase agreements, or PPA contracts. Those are the contracts between the energy retailers in Alberta and a government agency that resells power bought from the electricity generators. That agency is called the Balancing Pool. And there's a clause in those contracts that reads, if a change in law rendered the buyer's PPA operation unprofitable or more unprofitable, then the buyer would be able to terminate the PPA. It's all a little complicated, but all you really need to know is, if the government does something crazy to make these contracts into garbage, that government agency, the Balancing Pool, would be on the hook for the whole mess. And the carbon tax was just that, something crazy. So energy retailers like Calgary taxpayer-owned ENMAX started returning their junk contracts to the Balancing Pool. That caused the Balancing Pool to start hemorrhaging cash all over the place, upwards of $65 million per month. Even the NDP project the losses to be near $2 billion, a result of their unnecessary carbon tax and thoughtless tinkering. That left the NDP scrambling to fix the mess they made and maybe save a little face along the way. Their bright idea? They claimed ignorance about this clause in the contracts, which might have been believable. I mean, it is the NDP. They don't know much about anything, really. But then the NDP said they were going to sue themselves as the government to overturn the clauses in those contracts written way back in the year 2000, on the pretense that they were going to protect the consumer. This was a ridiculous idea. The NDP socialists don't care about consumers. How could they? They were bringing in a tax to make everything more expensive. Something about it was just a little too fishy for me. These are the actual legal documents from that lawsuit where the NDP lay out their timeline about when they found out about the clause in the PPA contracts. Look here under number 58. They say they just found out about the PPA clause in late March of 2016. And just listen to Deputy Premier Sarah Hoffman confirm the government's timeline in a press conference when asked by a reporter in July of 2016.
Government officials did not know the existence of this clause until March of 2016 in a meeting with the Balancing Pool. Can you explain to me why Cabinet wasn't told of the possibility of this clause and why the Civil Service didn't know that it existed?
You know, it doesn't totally surprise me that when something was this secretive in the beginning, when it wasn't part of the public hearings, when it wasn't part of a standard disclosure process, that folks wouldn't be well aware of it. It was clear that there was an intention to have this deal struck secretly between Enron and the then government, and that certainly is not in the public interest, and we're arguing that it was also unlawful. So I'm sure more will surface through the court proceedings as we move forward, but certainly don't want to put any blame on the public service, who arguably had the same level of it was intentional by Enron and the then government that this not become public, so I'm not shocked that it was not public.
But that's wrong. The NDP knew about the change in law clause well before March 2016, and they proceeded with their reckless plans to change the electricity system in Alberta anyway. I can prove it all because I have the NDP internal emails. I can prove the NDP knew much sooner, at least as early as December 2015, and they were trying to hide their tracks along the way. They held a misleading press conference with the Deputy Premier. They filed a fake lawsuit. They misled the public and the media repeatedly, and then they even demanded that bureaucrats delete their emails. Let me show you. Here's the first email. It reads, "We had a conference call with ENMAX earlier this afternoon. during which they disclosed their intent to terminate the BR5 PPA as early as January 1, 2016. Now, that email is dated December 9th, 2015, and just look at the subject line. It actually cites the change in law clause that the NDP claimed they didn't know about until March 2016. And here is an email from an Assistant Deputy Energy Minister to Graham Mitchell. That's the Energy Minister's Chief of Staff. He's the out-of-province destroyer brought in by Rachel Notley to be the de facto Energy Minister and manage Marg McCuaig-Boyd. The email includes a briefing note prepared for the ministry explaining the change in law clause and how it will trigger further terminations of the PPAs. It's dated December 9th, 2015. Right here it reads, ENMAX as a PPA buyer may terminate a PPA if a change in law for increased environmental cost could reasonably be expected to render the PPA unprofitable to the PPA buyer. When they say increased environmental costs here, they mean the carbon tax. Now, that email even included a flow chart explaining the change in law clause for the more visual learners in the energy ministry. And look at this damning email. It shows that these weren't just rogue decisions made by energy ministry bureaucrats. Rachel Notley herself was being looped into this mess. Look at this. Hi, Bruce. Attached is a revised briefing note that includes info to try and answer some additional cues from the minister's staff. If you could please review and provide any comments by about 10, as James wants it by 11. Apparently, there is a brief to the Premier this afternoon. That email is dated December 10th, 2015. So not only did the Energy Minister's staff know, but the Premier also knew about the change in law clause, at least as early as December 10th, 2015. She was briefed on it. The cover-up about when the government knew they were going to trigger a catastrophic cascade in the energy system goes all the way up to the Premier's office, and this one email proves it. They didn't just learn about the clause in March of 2016. The Premier herself was briefed on it on the afternoon of March 10th, 2015. But there is something even more shocking than the government flat out misleading the public. We should all maybe be a little used to it by now. Look at this. This is an email from the Assistant Deputy Minister of Energy to the CEO of the Balancing Pool, Bruce Roberts, telling him to delete emails, destroying any evidence against the government. It reads, sensitive and transitory. Please delete. Please delete. The bureaucrats working for the Balancing Pool are being told to delete emails and briefing notes informing them about ENMAX invoking the termination clause. It looks like the government was already scheming to cover their tracks by December 10th of 2015. The Wild Rose Party even put out a press release in November calling for an Auditor General investigation into potentially deleted emails because they too had received some of these very same documents. But the mainstream media, while they were too busy congratulating the NDP for their leadership and virtue signaling at the UN Climate Change Conference in Morocco, to pay attention to Rachel Notley's government being caught in the willful destruction of government documents to hide their lies and mistakes. It's appalling. The destruction of government records can be a crime, especially if it's happening to avoid freedom of information requests. Remember when brand new Premier Rachel Notley was against the destruction of government documents? I do. She called for a halt to the PC's mass shredding of documents during the transition of government, and she called for a review of the practice, which found that there was a lack of oversight by management. But here we see NDP senior managers ordering the deletion of government emails. Nothing has changed. Not one thing. Might even be worse. But like we always do at The Rebel, we will attach all of these documents so you can read them for yourself. Or if someone in the mainstream media actually wants to do their job and use them, they might even want to cover this story. Rachel Notley promised Albertans an open, honest, and more transparent government. And here is her government deleting emails and thinking they can get away with it. Just like Kathleen Wynne and her gas plant triple delete email scandal. Just like old grandma bleach bit Hillary Clinton. This is how progressives deal with their problems. Delete, 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 but it's not going away. I want to see those emails, and I want you to see them too. I will not stop until I do. But the NDP should not be allowed to get away with this. It could be illegal. It's definitely unethical. That's why at the Rebel we are continuing our investigation. But to get access to these documents, it can be quite expensive. We are routinely handed bills in the thousands of dollars by Rachel Notley's government. If you can help donate to cover these costs, go to whatissshehiding.com. You can see some of my past investigations and make a donation there. Asking questions no one else will is expensive, but it's not going to stop me. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. To see my past investigations into Rachel Notley's government, go to whatissshehiding.com, where you can make a donation to fund our independent journalism.